Okay. All right. Great. Okay, welcome everyone. Hope everyone is doing great.
Hi, Namdi.
Hi, Namdi.
Hi,
I'm
Namdi.
very good.
Oh,
All right. Glad to be doing this. It's been a long time coming. All right. So I will just wait a minute or two to allow a couple of people joining on LinkedIn. Right. Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome Fees, welcome Phillips, welcome Falashade. I think as we go on, please feel free to drop for those joining us online, please feel free to drop your where you're joining from on the comment section on LinkedIn. It'd be great to see. It'd be great to see where everyone is joining us from. We have a very interesting conversation to deal with today, and as a design advocate, I'm particularly interested and excited for this one because it hits close to home. Basically, we were talking about driving revenue and customer retention through design, and it's going to be such an interesting conversation given the lineup of speakers that we have tonight this evening. So I'll just do a little bit of. I think everyone just introduce themselves 1 minute. I think we'll just start with you, Folashade.
I thought you were going to say ladies first because I know that's what you guys used to. You say ladies first. Anyways,
Well,
hi everybody. Hi Nnamdi. Hi everybody, my fellow panelists. Hi everybody. My name is Folashade Blessing Adegbite. I'm a senior product designer at InterSwitch, and alongside that, I'm also a community founder. I founded Designer Fola Community like last year, so to help beginners basically thrive. So that's like a little bit about me. Anyways, you can read more about me. Thank you.
all right, thank you so much. Welcome, Folashade. Phillips, and go next.
Oh, hi, everyone. Good to be here. And thanks for hosting this, by the way, Namdi. Like the energy here. And good to meet every other panelist. Hafiz, Falashade, great work you're doing at InterSwitch, by the way. So my name is Phillips Wachuku. I am a senior product manager at Quidax Technologies. I lead a bunch of innovation products at Quidax. So back to you, Namdi.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Phillips. Hafiz, Malik.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I know you probably have some questions concerning my name. Yes, so my name is Hafiz Abdul Malik, but you can also call me John. I know there's a lot of story behind that. I'm a front-end engineer at Stack, and I build interesting products here at Stack for the front-end team. Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited to be here, and I love the energy in this place already. I also send greetings like to our people that are joining us virtually as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know that some people might be wondering, we had a slight change in the lineup. Leia, who is the head of head of design at RiseVest, was not able to join us because he had a very important engagement last minute. So we he's currently not on the panelist. But yes, we have a product manager, a designer, and an engineer on the call. What better way to deal with this conversation than to have the triad present? All right, so we'll get straight into it. So like I said, this conversation is about driving revenue through design. We're in a world, or in this part of the world, there is a lot of businesses that spring up left, right, center, and there's usually that challenge of what design, the role of design in the success of businesses, and that's something that we want to tackle this evening. Um, Most times people think that design is about aesthetics, how things look, flashy ideas, beauty, and all of that. But I think that's losing up to that's very limited thinking, because a whole lot could be lost if you are running a business, and especially a tech business, and there isn't much attention that is being paid to the design thinking. All right. Unfortunately, the word design always comes off as visuals, all right? But it's beyond that, and that's something we want to deal with. So before we continue, welcome Wisdom. See you, El Haj from France. Wow, that's interesting. Welcome Linda from Abuja, Joy from Abuja. Welcome Latif from Lagos. We have Kalai Dilshad from India. Welcome, and Prince Jebik. Welcome. I know we have a lot more people on the call, so please feel free to drop where you're calling or where you're joining us from, and we'll call out to you at some point. Okay, so let's get straight into it. All right. Um, so let's first ground this conversation in reality. We often hear that design is more than visuals. I've said it, a couple of times. Sometimes most design leaders keep on pushing this idea. Design is more than what it looks like. So let's look at what exactly does this mean for the bottom line of a business. I think my first question to everyone would be like, how does design practically influence revenue and customer retention for a business, right? Especially maybe um, in high stakes environment. Especially, how do we measure the impact of design beyond visuals and how it looks? Does anyone want to go? Falasha, did you want to try?
Sorry, I actually lost you. Like, I don't know. It was breaking a bit. I don't know if it was
Oh,
from my end or from
apologies for
yours.
that. I'll just go with the question again. Basically, how does design practically influence revenue and customer retention, all right, in high stakes environments? How do you measure the
Okay.
effect or impact of design, beyond just pixels?
Okay. So hi again. So like you were the cause of this problem, right, was that people used to think that design was just UI. Like even when people wants to learn like UI and product design itself, they tend to say, "Oh, I love colors. I'm good at this." I don't know if you've heard like that kind of excuse, like because that's why they want to learn and all that. So bringing design directly, how design directly actually drive revenue. For me, I would say that I would like say so. This is very real for me because aside working here, I've worked like for 6 years, I guess, in a fintech organization, right? So, and in fintech, when you're building like a fintech product, you're not designing for maybe casual behavior. You're actually designing for people's money. Like people, they are trusting you to actually put their money, right? You're building because they trust you, right? So I've seen products that they technically worked perfectly, but people actually still abandon them. It works like technically perfectly, right? But people just tend to abandon them, right? And I've had opportunity to like to speak to users, right? Because I was doing research, both research and design itself, right? And I found out that they were not like abandoning the product because of functionality. It was more about how do I put it? It was more about let's say confidence, right? I heard them. One of them said something like, "I'm not sure what will happen." Like because design was there, right? They've done the product designer has done the design, right? And the guy was like, "I'm not sure, like what will happen. Like if I click a particular thing, I'm not sure what is going to happen." And the person was so careful, like because he doesn't want to make mistake because he knows that it's actually a money thing. So if he makes
Mm,
any mistake, anything can actually happen. So it was even beyond functionality. He was just scared that because there was no clarity, like a lot of clarity in design, because he wasn't sure that if I click on this, what will happen, right? So I feel that what design does in that kind of environment is actually emotional. It because it reduces stress. When you have your your UI, your UX, it's your UI, your UX should actually give your users clarity. It's beyond functional. Yes, functionality is part. There's the UI part, but also they should be able to confidently click what it should be. So, for instance, if you build a product for them to send money, let's say, for instance, you build a product to send money, right? The user should go on the app and be able to send that money confidently without not being scared of making mistake. Because if there's no
mm,
clarity, there's no point, right? And that way, I feel that we can actually measure um, usability, but by looking at the completion of the flow, has the flow, what's like the usage, what's like the drop off rate, what's like the transaction success rate, and
yeah.
how do people often like come back without being pushed. Because I used to tell my mentees that you are not going to be there when the users are actually using the product. Yes, you've built the product. Number one, you're not the user. I am not going to be there when they're using the product. So you have to build something that they know it's clear. Like it's very clear that if I click on this button, this is the action that will happen, not the other way around that they are scared because it's money matter. So that's like what I think about it.
Oh, such brilliance. I think like you rightly said at even at the beginning, perception, the way people see design is usually very limited, right?
Mhm.
Let me hear from Hafiz, the senior engineer at Mainstack. From your point of view, how do you how do you think or how do you measure the impact of design beyond a clean interface or beyond visuals?
All right, yeah. So I'm not going to have an entirely different opinion from Folashade because she really nailed it, right? So, but let's just drive this home. So, design is a catalyst for you to prove the integrity of your business, right? That's how I see design. So, because in a high stake environment like in fintech, for example, you are dealing with people's money, and especially when it's now in Nigeria again, Nigerians don't joke with their money. So when they are interacting with when they are interacting with your product, right? It's not just about the interface that they are seeing. They are trying to you are trying to ask yourself, are they feeling this product? Like how are they feel? The impact of design is more emotional, like just like Folashade said. It goes beyond the visual, it reaches to the to the to how they feel, how they perceive the product, and especially will they trust the product. So when you are designing, you always have it at the back of your mind that what you are doing is because design is at the core of the or at the core of the business value, basically, at the core of business strategy, permit me to say, right? You want to ensure that your business strategy in your business strategy you are really paying attention to your design, because design is how you even communicate the strategy in the first place. The users don't know they don't have access to the blueprint of your design. They don't know what you have written down. The way they interact with it is through your design, right? And if you're not doing a good job, if you are just focusing on the interface, basically you are going to have a or you might even run into a situation where there's going to be a mismatch, right? Between what you are designing and the user's mental model, basically. So the impact of design to me is always about trust. Like, can we get people to trust us? So that's what you are asking yourself, like, because trust is very, very scarce and people don't just give it freely. So I'm going to wrap it there because Falashadi has spoken extensively on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Hafiz. Thank you so much, Hafiz. Phillips, let me ask the question in a more personalized or a different light, all right? Which business metrics have you personally seen that improved as a result of strong or excellent design, all right? From your end. Like, is there something you can share?
Oh, sure, by all means, by all means, and just to go back to what Folashade started out with, right? Design communicates trust, and when you have clarity, then you are able to map your customers, your users' intent, take them through the processes or the flows on your product to eventually giving you the money. So,
Yeah.
good design buys you trust, right? And when you think of it, especially in the context of fintech, especially in the context of our market, the Nigerian, the African market, trust is really the only currency that matters before the money moves, actually. Now, talking about metrics, right? You think of time to value, okay, and time to value um, really goes from various flows to various flows. So at the very top of your funnel, when you are trying to get your customers to know about your product, to actually sign up on your product, to whether they are performing KYC or whether they are performing specific actions on your product, the time they spend moving from where they started to where they are clear that they've gotten value from using your product is a very, very important metric. So think of it in this way. How long does it take your customers, for instance, from finding you to signing up on your product to opening that let's say is an application, is an app, to opening that app to, let's say, doing their KYC, to completing a transaction, right?
Mm,
That is very, very, very important metric. And especially in a market where, network stability could be an issue, think of speed being an issue. And the clarity
mm,
of your design, the clarity of the clarity of your design is a very, very important determinant of that particular metric in time to value. There are a number of other metrics I personally look out for that are underpinned by design, but maybe I'll yield to other panelists to speak to it as well.
mhm. All right. All right. Thank you so much. Falasha, did you want to share? Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was going to like share like maybe a personal experience like so for me the biggest improvement that I have seen um through design, I don't know why I like behavior, but I feel that they usually show up in user behavior, right? So I have seen conversion rate actually improve just by simplifying the sign up page. So, like for instance, you have your sign up, you have, let's say, onboarding, right? And some users, they tend to, the way you build your onboarding, right, sometimes determine how they would enter, or let me use the word, like decide to log in or something like that, right?
Right.
So I've had to like improve just onboarding flow, right? I didn't had any new feature. We didn't have any new feature. We just had to correct something because we saw that people were dropping off. They didn't understand a particular thing, right? And I've seen because of the redesigning of the sign up, and based on user feedback or based on how we see or perceive that users actually use that product, right? We were able to like redesign, and from there the conversion grew like better. Like if let's say it was 10% before, like maybe revenue was like, let me use revenue was like 10% before, it just moved. And that was because we saw that there was an issue here with the problem with and there was a problem, and we had to like just fix it. It was not we didn't say, okay, let's add another feature or let's bring in another functionality. It was just something that already exists, right, in the product. So another thing, big one, is support cost. So when the product start like explaining itself better through design, it's um you also have to so for instance, I think empty screens, I don't know, when you design better empty screens, so for instance, better error messages, like you just like rebrand some things, and that's because you got feedback. Because sometimes leadership can come, and I've seen it happen, like not my current company, but maybe somewhere like maybe with other people I've worked with, and they will just come and tell you that, okay, I just want you to like change this. Like they just tell you, I don't know if that happened to anybody. They just tell you based on their own perception, whereas they have not actually checked if truly why are users dropping off. They've not done their own research to see, okay, drop off is happening because the sign up is not clear, or because the functionality on a particular screen is not clear. But sometimes people are biased and they just come to tell you, okay, can we just change this color or can we just do this? But I feel that if we're the understanding of how the users perceive the product or how the users are using the product will actually help, right, improve our yeah, it will actually help. Yeah, I think
All
that's my
right.
own. Yeah.
All right, all right. I think one thing that is interestingly embedded in this question is the fact that it's really important for designers and UX experts to be very much interested in business metrics. All right, every decision made on the design has to have and a corresponding influence on, in quotes, bottom line. All right. Is this going to increase the number of people that are going to use this particular feature? All right. Does this help improve the experience and make it simpler? Does this new addition improve the trust that people have, or does it impede the process? So I think that one fundamental thing is that designers should actually pay attention. It's not just about the cleanliness or the beauty, or is this particular flow straightforward. It should connect to some sort of business metric. All right. The fact that something is clear and straightforward, does that make it more valuable to the user? And does that value in turn relate to business value for us? All right. So I think that's everyone has pointed that out in their responses. And I think that's something that every designer, and not just designers, even in triads in teams, all right, everyone should also ensure that whatever decision that is made on any product or feature should tie to some business relevance. All right, but that leads me to my next question. All right, and this speaks about habits, and processes basically. So, like, what technical practices or what practices have helped to embed design as a revenue generating function across organizations, not just within the design team. All right. So there is this notion that design kind of feels like a service function, like, oh, we need to get something done. Let's call in design. Well, we've already thought about everything. This is all we want to get done. Let's bring in design now that we've come up with the idea. All right. Rather than seeing design as a strategic partner. All right. So in that light, like what kind of processes or habits, should help embed design as a revenue driving function across organizations? I would like to hear from you, Phillips.
Okay, great stuff. Because I was just thinking of my response here. So, one thing I found to be very useful is the practice of exposing everyone on the team, right? Exposing everyone on the team to the pains customers face. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a
Mm,
PM, right? It's something we call exposure therapy, as it were. So basically, that means whenever I'm having a support call, all right, a usability test, it's not just going to be me and the designer. It's not just going to be me and customer success. All right.
Mm,
So I sort of encourage literally everyone to sit in on those calls, look through at least one support ticket. All right. And when you think of it, it's very important that that alone sort of surfaces challenges that are design centric to everyone on the
mm,
team. Okay.
mm,
More often than not, I've seen situations where engineers sort of downplay downplay a design related issue. Is it not just a button? But okay, this just button has given us 70 something tickets in 70 something CS tickets in how many minutes? It is an issue, right? So that culture of exposing literally everyone on the team helps everyone move away from simply seeing design as as decorative to actually a pain point for customers that could improve their clarity. All right,
mm,
and then to ensure that money is not the company is not losing money, or the company is not losing keeping money on the table. All right, and now that culture eventually transitions to excellence, where
mm,
everyone, and not just the designer, everyone from the product person to the engineer to the quality assurance person begins to care as much about the design as everything else, right? So that's really one thing that helps me drive that culture, make sure design and design practices are very effective across teams.
yeah, I think that's really brilliant. So in the design process, irrespective of the approach, all right, there's a phase that has to do with like empathy, all right, and I think how design can champion that part of the product development or product design process. I'm trying not to be too cliche. All right. Well, design can champion it. It's great that, everyone, every stakeholder is kind of involved in some sort of way in really getting closer to the actual problem. All right. Because it kind of uncovers certain insights that could be very useful for, eventually coming up with the solution that will be built. All right. Malik, I'm sorry, Hafiz. Sorry, I kind of prefer Malik, but yeah, Hafiz.
Yeah,
What
it's
do you
fine. You
think?
can anyone is fine. You
Yeah.
can treat my league, you can choose a place. Yeah, so for me, in terms of culture, I'm going to come from the angle. I'm going to be speaking as an engineer because it also affects us in a way,
Yep.
right? So because on my team, for example, we have there's what we call it's like a culture basically, but we call it customer obsession. Like you have to be customer obsessed, right? So
Mm,
when whatever that you are doing, you must understand the impact of. Even though you are not a designer, you should also understand that your work is delivering some kind of value to our end
mm,
users, right? So regardless of your role, right, everybody on the team knows that what they are doing is contributing in terms of value. So everybody is on the same page as to what it is that we are doing, right? So we know that what I'm building is going to affect our customers either positively or negatively. So the culture that we imbibe here is customer obsession. We
mm,
always approach things from the point of view of a customer, right? Is this going to help our customers positively? It is going to deliver the intended value to our customers. So these are things that we have at the back of our minds, even as we are writing our codes, right? We are not designing interface, for example, right? Like the designer, but when we are writing our code as well, we also have it at the back of our mind that what we are also doing, we must make sure that the design that we have or the design that the design team has given us, we need to communicate it effectively and efficiently to our end user, even in our code. As we are designing our systems, we have the customer in mind. So I believe if teams have this kind of mindset, understanding the fact that, oh, it is because I'm not on the customer support team or whatever, does not, or maybe you are not customer facing, for example, at the end of the day, your work still translates to some form of value that gets to the customer, and it's
yeah.
going to affect them positively or negatively. So for me, I think customer obsession is just that key culture that I think if everybody on the team can have, it's going to help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just glanced at I think there's a comment from Elizabeth Agbola said exposing everyone on the team will prevent the whole designer developer quarrel. I know that I know that sometimes we like to get into some strange squabble between design and engineering. Designer has done something crazy, and the engineer is like, "Oh my goodness, who is this person?" Yeah, but yeah, that collaboration. That's again, it kind of has an undertone of empathy, being able to really get involved in the problem kind of helps everybody see that a particular approach or solution um, is works for that problem. Um, so I would like for you, Falashade, for this next question, particularly direct this to you because you're a senior product designer, all right? And many times when we're building features, there's very limited resource, very limited time. We usually have to crunch a lot of stuff within a small amount of time. And
Mhm.
you hear designers struggle with, oh, I'm not given enough allowance to be able to do XYZ. All right, that would be helpful. So when resources are limited, basically, how do you make a case for investing in design? All right, what
Mm.
arguments do you have with maybe decision makers, that help secure design time and budget during prioritization, basically?
Very interesting question. Okay, so when resources are tight,
Yeah.
we focus on actually protecting the impact, not just the process. So that's like my core.
Mhm,
And first thing I do is I actually tie my design work directly to business outcomes, right? So if, for instance, if a feature that I'm to build or I'm asked to build, if it can't be linked to revenue or it can't be linked to retention or probably maybe or it's not linked to something that brings money, right? It actually becomes harder. So most times I tie my design work to business outcome, right? So I make sure that every design decision answer a clear business question. Questions like will this improve conversion? Will this design I want to work on, will this actually improve conversion, right? Will it what depending on the product I am building. And the next thing I do is also I tend to like prioritize my high leverage work, right? I
mhm,
focus on um I focus on the 20% of design efforts that will actually drive 80% of the results, right? That means that I tend to post nice to have UI design, right? And I focus on solving the core user problem, right?
mhm,
So I also tend to like use data. Like I think that's like one of the things I do majorly, like especially where I'm coming from, right? I tend to like show data because it has happened before that where I've worked before that there was a particular product design that was done and it was built, everybody we reviewed, da. Then somebody just came and I think one of the PM just came that let's change this, right? The truth is that I tried to like like talked about it, like this is the business outcome. I even showed data. I I tend to like I defend like the design because I did my research right before I
mhm,
actually like
mhm,
did that design. Like I did my research, like not just surface, right? I showed data, but there was many things around I can't really explain. And we had to like go for a design, particular design. Do you know that? Believe me, like after this design was done, then we had to review again. Do you know that eventually, thank God that I did not delete because my mentor is teaching me that when a design improvement, instead of you deleting, just keep it somewhere.
yeah,
Eventually, after the whole back and forth, we went back to what was actually like designed, right? Because when they were like questions, there were questions being asked, okay, why did we go for this? And I still show my data, like, okay, this is it, this is my validation to protect my design. This is it, this is what I have done, this is the research I have done, this is this. So I tend to like let them know how
yeah,
because if you do not like tie your design work to business outcome, they might not take you serious. I feel like if designers out there tend to like tell what will be the outcome of this design if this design is done rightly, if this design is
Yeah.
rushed, what will happen if you're able to defend it. I feel like at the long run, design will be considered, or they will always think about like design before they just, because developers, I not to shade any developer, because sometimes it's not the developer's fault at times. Sometimes they just go to the PM and it's not the PM fault, because the PM also reports to somebody as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a rush, but I feel like if I've had times that the data thing worked, and I've had times that they didn't like see, they just wanted to do what they want to do. But eventually, like I'm happy that we went back to design because there was actually proof, and they also saw that it was a result. Because if we built this, this would just, like if we're trying to get revenue, it will just crash completely, right?
Yeah.
So data, use of data is very, very important. Quick validation, very, very important to protect your design. And there are many things, but because of our time, I might not be able to. Yeah, thank you. But just
Yeah.
those little
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Wow, that's such a very relatable. 100%. I think any designer can relate to this. Sometimes you have to go the extra mile to push for a particular approach to be taken. And I like to think that, with connecting your work, like you rightly said, or whatever decision you've made to business outcome, already kind of puts a foot in the door for you as a designer. All right. Let me take a different approach for this particular one, and probably maybe anyone else could just deal with this. Um, there's an aspect of the I won't call it design work because even product managers and engineers are also involved in it. But the aspect of experimentation, for example, all right, running experiments or usability tests, for example, you have something to deliver in 2 weeks or in a very short amount of time, all right? And there are certain decisions that you have to make that can't necessarily be made until you maybe validate or do some kind of testing, all right? What's a great way for a designer to get everybody to agree to the fact that we really do need to run this experiment or do this test before we go ahead with any decision? All right. I would have asked you for that, Shade, because I know you probably have had some of this experience, but let me start with Phillips.
Okay, I mean, for starters, for Lashad, I think this is one of the few times I've actually heard a product designer talk about making data-backed design decisions. It's quite rare. It's quite rare. But I mean, that also speaks to the quality of you as a professional. So good stuff there. Um, Experimentation is very important, especially in my line of work. And when you think of A/B testing typically comes when there are a number of what's the word now? Where there are a number of whether inconsistencies or you just cannot say for a certainty that this is the expected user behavior or this is the expected outcome from a particular design decision you want to take. The absolute best way is A/B testing, and of course, A/B tests are best done with designers, right? Um, Let me also say that there are no so correlation is not the same thing as causation, right? In as much as there
Yeah.
is really no way to say that this particular design decision we want to take is going to give rise to XYZ. This is where hypothesis comes in. And to prove a hypothesis, there has to be that point where you're like saying, okay, we're not exactly sure how the design decision will impact our bottom line or impact XYZ business metrics or impact XYZ customer behavior. So let's put it to test. Okay. Now, the absolute best way to do that is to have very great sample size that will, either validate or not validate what you're trying to test out for. And from a design perspective, that sort of helps everything. Why? Because you begin to see it as a cost saving mechanism. I actually do think A/B testing is like a cost saving mechanism, right? Because if you do not test stuff, even the tiniest stuff, so far it's going to introduce some significant change in your observed customer behavior. If you do not test stuff, chances are excellent that if you don't fix that problem now, you may have the entire business suffer for it, or you may have the support team having to apologize for it forever. Okay. So Making a case for it is simply the same as placing the cost versus the benefit side by side. If we just ship this design decision out to the customer without first getting them in their natural habitat, trying it out, conducting usability tests, whether it is just putting variants of it in various cohorts of our customers and trying to gauge which one pushes us closer to our expected outcome, then be ready for the downside of things. And in my experience, that sort of moves the needle almost always in the direction of yes, let's get this done. All right, yes, let's get the A/B test done.
Mm.
Over to Namdi.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Sorry, before we move ahead, if you have any questions from the audience, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the comment section. I think we would try as much as possible to address them as we proceed. Thank you. Thank you so much, Phillips, for that. And I'll head over to Hafiz. So um, in terms of the relationship between, I mean, there's a triad: design, engineering, product management, and then other stakeholders, right? What we say are like shared processes, right, that help keep your product, shared processes between, for example, engineering and design that help keep your products and or your teams aligned. Maybe your engineering and design teams aligned towards like delivering a really good experience for your product that even boosts retention or revenue.
Okay, so uh, let me start by saying most of my close friends are designers, so I'm not always fighting. We are not always having friction,
I'm
unlike
I'm glad I'm
for the
glad I'm
other
in that group.
yeah. So yeah, so the way the kind of process we adopt here is one that is not very, it's not a very formal. So we try, like I stated earlier, that everybody on the team is customer obsessed. So we are all on the
Mm,
same page
mm,
concerning that. And so when when it's time for us to work, we work like we are Siamese twins basically, right? We always see ourselves as we are working towards the same goal, right? Nobody is trying to prove any point to anybody. So our process is usually one that enforces symphony, that enforces harmony, that enforces that everybody is taking ownership of what they need to do, right? So we adopt a process that is, like I said, it's not very formal, but is heavily driven by customer obsession. We want to
mm,
deliver value, and so we are all on that. Like everybody is we are heavy on. We want to deliver value. We want to deliver this thing, and so however
mm,
it is that we need to get it done, we just get it done, right? So we don't have like a formal process of, because when you're, especially when you're in a startup, right, time is not always your friend, right? You just need to get things done as quickly as possible, and you also want to deliver quality. You don't want to compromise on quality. So most times we go with the informal approach. We work together as bodies, and like I said, most of my friends are even the designers at our place. Some of them are my friends, so we have a very good relationship. Sometimes we even like, if it requires that we stay like late into the night to have side conversations, we do that, right? Because sometimes we get to stay in the same apartment together sometimes, so we share ideas, we bounce. So there's just a lot of, so I feel like in my own case, in my own experience, like having a good relationship with amongst teammates is like a no-brainer basically. Like it's just something that that tilts the what's it called now, that tilts the needle in the right direction for you. So we take an informal approach, right, as much as possible, and then at the back of our mind, we are all obsessed with delivering value, basically.
yeah, yeah. It's a brilliant one. I think this speaks to the kind of the quality of the engineering processes and engineering thinking that you have at your team, and it's really great to see how that relationship builds up with design and engineering. I'd like to hear from you, Falashade. Same question.
Okay. Okay, so like Malik, sorry, like Afiza said, I feel like relationship, like um so sometimes designers used to like, what they've taught me is you involve everybody from scratch. Like you don't
Mm,
just make a design. For instance, you're building a design system, right? And you just decide to build. Then you now call engineering. Oh yeah, I'll come and build what I have done. I feel like collaboration is key. Communication is key. I feel like there should be, it should turn to a norm. It should be a norm that engineers, designers, product managers should be like friends. Like it should be like a click thing. Like they should
Yeah.
work together. Like that's what I feel. I feel like the designers, the PM, everybody needs to work as one. Like if we see ourselves as one, right, we're going to deliver the best, or the best that we can be, or the best product ever, right? I also
Yeah.
think that designers should communicate. So something that happened before at work, that I think I did a design, right? Well, no, the design was not done, right? And because I was working on other things, right? And because of time, do you know that the engineering guy just said, Fola Shade, please, can I talk to you for a minute? And he asked me some question that because of time, we can't wait for design, right? But I just want to speak from your brain. What do you think that this should look like? Right, because he knows that I was working on some other things that were priority, and what he's working on, it was just like they've implemented something, but there's something that was missing that needs to be added at that point, and it was something like it needs to happen like ASAP, right? So instead of him saying, let me just go and do whatever I like, maybe I can't wait for Fola Shade, or I can't wait for the designer, he had to, like, we had to jump on a call, and he had to show me his thought process. And from there I was like, okay, I think you can do this better, like just do this and do this. And at the end of the day, he designed it, like implemented it in code directly. And at the end of the day, I was able to even bring it to my design, because and when it was done, I reviewed it again to see, oh, I think you should add one or two things and all that. And at the end of the day, it delivered, right? I
mm,
just gave my input. It was based on relationships. So I feel like, because sometimes it has happened that designers will design something, then developers will give you what you ordered versus what you got, that kind of vibe, right?
Yeah.
Like the, you will give them something. Tell me that, oh, you face difficulty, because sometimes designers too used to go far and beyond. Let me use that word. Let me say they go far and beyond, right?
yeah,
Sometimes they don't look at the technical parts of things or functionality. They just build something, right? Now the developer has discovered that this thing cannot work, maybe back end or something. Instead of them to
yeah,
communicate with the designer and say, hey guy, hey Folashade, I think this cannot work due to this or this to this. Not that you will not develop it, finish. We will not have review call. I will not be seeing something different. I'll be
Something entirely different.
like this is not what.
mm,
And that's why like my like we, after we design and develop, we still do, like, with the research team would still do their insights, do their testing to be sure that everything is the testing, the QA, test the design, test the implementation to be sure that this is actually what was designed. And if there's now an
mm.
issue, everybody, let's collaborate to fix it. Thank you. I hope with this viewpoint of mine, I've been able to convince you that we should work as one. Thank you very much.
I'm more
Yeah.
than convinced. I'm more than convinced. Phillips, you want to say something there?
Yeah, I mean, I just while Flashade was speaking, I remembered in the previous life, right? I used to work at a place where design was handed down, right? It wasn't
Mm,
an agency. The design was literally handed down to the product manager and the engineering team. So just imagine designer goes for like 3 days, works on stuff, and just hands it down to you to go run with it. You know, which doesn't make sense. Of course, as you can imagine, there were always a lot of avoidable issues. All right,
mm,
compatibility issues. There were always something not making sense within the team dynamics, and of course the quality of the product that were built in that lifetime. So yes, to echo what Folashade has said, it is very, very important that the team works as one. I mean, where I currently work, we work as squads, and really the concept of a squad is, think of it as an infantry, right? An infantry where
mm,
literally everyone has one agenda, and we'll kill anything, we'll kill ourselves to deliver that agenda in a manner of speaking, right?
yeah,
So for design, starting out the design process, right, to a very extent, carry literally everyone along. In conducting design reviews, right, even before it becomes an actual high fidelity stuff. Because it's important that engineering understand very early on, all right, the impact of literally every single thing, the practicability of what is being designed. Again, it reduces the time to market for stuff you're building. It reduces, the risk of customers not being able to use what is being designed. Yeah. So that's my contribution. Great
Mm,
point
well,
for that.
yeah. Yeah, well said. Well said. Well said. And to put it all into perspective, I think a great way to kind of summarize this is like the quality of the collaboration between these stakeholders, product stakeholders, is will eventually influence the quality of what is delivered at the end, right? If if that's not dealt with early on, it's very possible that there will be very buggy features, or there'll be experience issues, or even in fact business, like everybody work on stuff and then it doesn't really make sense in the end, and there'll be a lot of wasted efforts, right? So it's really, really important that that collaboration is very there's a lot of attention to that, all right, from the get-go. I like to say that, like Folashade mentioned, involvement of this core, especially the product designer, the engineer, and the product manager, from discovery all the way to delivery. All right. There's not one part of the entire process that, I mean, obviously you wouldn't expect the designer to actually like code the final thing, or the engineer to come and rework the entire prototypes, but there's always going to be that shared context across all the different levels of the process. All right. One interesting thing I've seen work, all right, for example, my team is we have like what we call the shared design system, right? So we have our design system as design team, and then the engineer too has the same design system that they work with. All right. That kind of helps with improving the quality of, or ensuring that what we eventually create is exactly what comes out. All right. Some of the things that we even do in some cases is like, we know that our product is very API heavy, and so designers are very involved in ensuring that even the API documentation is part of our experience design. All right. So we have something called integration experience, sorry. And that's us as designers being involved in that kind of helps us even get even clearer perspective of the technicalities behind the solutions that we build. And all of that kind of helps with, you know, um, ensuring that eventually whatever comes out is very meaningful. Right. Before we go to our next question, there's a very interesting question in our um, comment section. And the question is basically, as freelancers who work with independent clients, right, how essential is research in the design process, and what is the most effective way, or what are the most effective ways to approach it when resources and time might be limited? Anyone want to take that? Thanks,
Okay.
Kando. I hope I pronounced that well, Kando Kingsley, for that question.
Okay. Um, Whoever asked that question, that's really a great question, because most times, um, freelancers, they feel like research is not important. But I feel, from my own perspective, maybe I've worked on some other projects, right? I feel like research is absolutely essential, right? Even if you are working with small clients, or probably product is very little or maybe not big, you never can tell where that product will get to, right? Or whose hand the product will get to, right? So I know it's tempting to just jump straight into design because of maybe limited time or budgets, or probably but I feel like skipping research is like you're building on guesswork, right? You don't
Mm,
understand, because you don't have understanding of the user. You need to understand the problem itself, or even the context. If you don't understand all these things, you actually risk creating something that actually looks good, but doesn't actually solve anything, right? Because I've been there before. Because I feel like it's freelance work now. Yeah, let's just enter design. At the end of the day, I had to go back, like, to actually do my like do my research, see that even that product, because I believe that that product currently exists maybe in another form or in another way, right? Even taking that your competitive analysis, try to see product that has been built before, right? So that being said, um your research, yeah, should be part of your process, but it doesn't have to be like massive or probably very expensive, right? I feel that you can just talk to maybe few users. So, for instance, maybe for a company we want to talk to 10 users or maybe 20 users, you can just like limit it and say, okay, let me talk to like 3 to 5 people, right? Just for you to get, oh, what's their pain point? What, for instance, if a product already exists, what is the problem they are facing using this product? How can you solve that problem with this product you want to build? Then also you can also use existing data. You don't just jump into, like, I feel like no on whether you're freelancing or you are working with the organization, you should not just jump into Figma, because that's what people like. Figma is the next thing. Oh, I got this. Okay, let me jump. I feel like you can also use like existing data, right? If you don't want to like go into all those other stuff, you can actually use existing data, right? So if, for instance, a client already has like a website or probably a product, you can just look at it. Okay, what's the behavior? What's like the pattern? Why are people dropping off? Like you have to gather the metrics. Like I think there are other there are analytical tools that you can use to like derive those results, right? Then also, like I said, competitive analysis, like try to see, okay, what are other competitors, what have they built, right? Then also you can validate your design with or your ideas with maybe people that have used similar products or even with stakeholders or people. But I feel that don't carry the mindset that research it's I don't need research. I feel like as a freelancer, you should have the mindset that research is the investment that you need to actually prevent wasted efforts. That's like simple that I would just say. Just see it like that. That research is very essential for you so that you don't waste your time building something that is not usable. A good product must be what? Usable, useful, equitable, and enjoyable. So you don't want to build something out of that. Right. So please see your research as something as an investment, not your I feel like whatever you are given to do, do it well. Like do it regardless of whether you're paying you well or I don't know, Sha. That's my opinion. Right. Yeah, thank you.
All right, all right. Thank you so much for Lashadi. Just to add a little to that, it's really important to. So I think the context of this question is usually around when there's very limited resource. All right, when there's very limited time, especially to get some of these things. I know most times in this part of the world, we're all about we want to launch fast, we want to build quickly, we want to put it in front of customers, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. All right, so how the I think the context more is more around like how will as a designer, how do I get to do this without pushing timelines? And one thing I would just say or suggest regards to this is that most times designers just think, oh, I want to do research, all right, and then research methodology, how do I do all of that? And there's a whole lot of process and that's actually what elongates the entire thing. I think the way to look at process is at research, sorry, is asking yourself like, what's the most important question I need to answer before I get to start building? All right. And that kind of helps you with a direction of how to go about your research. You might not necessarily, and with the advent of all these AI tools and a lot of partners that you could or tools that you could partner with to do this research, right? It could be faster, right? But the most important thing is like, what's the most pressing question I need to answer before I put anything down? All right. Once you have that, that kind of gives you a very guided approach to doing research and eventually coming up with those answers. All right. We have another question here from Temilade. She says, or he says, what they say. What strategies help product designers ensure that design outputs directly contribute to business growth and revenue impact? Is this something you want to take on, Phillips? Hi, Phillips. Can you hear us? Oh, okay. I think Phillips dropped off. Hafiz, you want to try your hand on this?
Okay, let me just give it a try. What
All right.
strategies help product designers ensure that? So, the way I understand this is you are looking at a strategy to ensure that what you are designing is translating into the business KPIs. That's what I believe this person is trying to say, right? And I think Folashade has answered a part of that in our response. You want to ensure that whatever it is that you're designing is backed by data, right? Like
Mm,
you are making informed decision, with your design choices. They are informed by data. They are informed by what has been done before and what can be better, right? So you want to make sure that whatever it is that you are doing. So the strategy is to make informed decision. That's. Let me just put it simply: make informed decision. Whatever it is that you are doing, make sure it is backed by enough data. There's enough data to support it. You are sure that because the data don't lie, right? The
mhm.
data will always like point you in the right direction and tell you, what is really happening. So when you make data backed decision, you can be sure that what you are doing is going to translate, into business value at the end of the day. I think Phillips is back. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. I think we kind of, sorry. I think there was a bit of a network issue for 1 or 2 minutes. I don't know if it's from my end but
Oh,
Phillips, can you hear us now? Since you're back.
from me.
Yes, yes, I can hear everyone now.
Okay, okay. By the way, we got your response, Hafiz, on data-backed decisions. But that leads me to the next question, all right, which is a very important one that Kando follows up with. Um, and speaking from your experience with data and as a senior PM, um, so when you're building like a new feature or a new product, and I'll just go with verbatim with Kando's question, like where can you get this data, especially or existing data, especially if you're designing something that is new or something that is a bit novel?
Okay, great stuff. So I mean, it depends on what you mean by new products or new products in an already existing industry, an already existing market, or an entirely new stuff. All right. Imagine if you were building a cell phone in the 70s. I mean, it's new, but it's also novel. So I will
Mm,
assume that your question is if it is a new product in an existing industry, right? Um, Data is everywhere. So there is what I call other people's data. There are two main kinds of data when you're building stuff, right? There's other people's data, there is your own data or our own data. Okay. Uh, the two are very important. Other people's data you can get from lots of places, right? You can get it from running industry specific research online using multiple platforms to get data, aggregated data that you need. Now your own data will take you a bit more work, right? Where you have to, number one, determine the exact kind of customers or exact kind of users you think you are building that product for. And then defining what their personas look like. This is important. Defining what their personas look like. That understanding will now help you know the kind of customers to pursue to validate that product. In pursuing them, you're either going online to figure out a community that best fits that product you want to build and engaging them with whether they are surveys or whatever it is. But the important thing is that number one, you have clarity on not just the product you want to build, but the customers. Absolutely. You're very correct, Abisola, that Quora is your repository of product data. But you have clarity on absolutely the kind of customers who are going to be using your product. Okay. And then the kind of persona your target customers are going to be so that you can then begin to do the work of where do I find potential customers that fit this persona, right? And how do I engage them? Finding them is probably the most difficult part. Okay. Quora is one platform. Twitter is depending on the product, depending on the customer kind. Social media can be another, and then specific communities. All right, there are communities everywhere, whether on Facebook, there are communities on Twitter or X, as you have it. There are communities on Discord. There are communities on wherever you can find, depending on the product. Once you found them, the part of now determining how to engage them to get the product you need is like the easier work, sort of easier work. So whether you are having unstructured interviews with them or you're having structured engagements with them, you're sending them links to take specific actions or to to take surveys or to fill out a form, whatever it is. But if you follow this path, then your problem is around 80 to 90% solved. Back to
That's
Nabil.
actually, yeah, that's such a brilliant response. To add a little bit to that, um, how I would also look at it is in cases where at the onset of your project or maybe during the research phase, there's very limited data, all right? In such situations, you can complement your process with more experimentation, all right? Obviously, because of experimentation helps you with like really testing hypotheses, like you had said earlier on in the conversation, Phillips. All right. So say you have very limited data, all right, or limited source of information to be able to, make certain decisions at the onset of your project. All right. You can make certain hypotheses and eventually ensure you do a lot of testing and experimentation before you push out such solutions. And I think that's, again, like we have said earlier on, designers play a very significant role in ensuring that happen, um, those happen across board. All right. As we begin to wrap up, I think one last question, and that's basically what data models or analytical techniques, all right, do you use to quantify the impact of design, all right, on I think we've touched a bit of this, but like what models exactly or techniques would you normally use to quantify the impact of design on, especially on revenue and on retention? I think I'll just go back to you, Falashade. Hi, Falashade. Can you hear us? Seems you're muted.
Okay, maybe I'll take a stab at it. Hi,
All right, all
Falashade.
right,
I think she's still muted. Okay, let me take a quick
all
stab at
right,
it. I had
all
touched a bit on what I personally use, which is A/B testing. But there is the larger part of that is what we call cohort analysis. Now, it
yeah.
is again, I think I did mention that um, correlation is not exactly causation. I think it is not impossible, but sometimes more often than not is not entirely straightforward to say, oh, change in this particular part of the product 100% is the reason why we experience XYZ% growth in revenue. But what we
Mhm.
can do is changes, all right, validate that those changes correlate significantly to revenue, increment in revenue. So cohort analysis is that technique I personally use. Now, but in cohort analysis, you are not just simply saying, oh, let me introduce a change in a particular flow and just do an A/B test. My approach to it is typically to look at, say, for instance, sign up funnel, right? And track the actions customers take on the part of your product that feeds into every every step in that funnel. Track the events as customers are taking that action, and determine the drop-off points. All right. So, for instance, if sign up, depending on where your customers are coming from, if they are coming from your
Mm,
website, then they have to go land on your website to opening your sign up form, to maybe providing OTP, validating their email address, to maybe performing some BVN verification or something. Those are points. All right. Now, what I typically do is to look at the cohort of my customers or my users who um, who who behave in a certain way to the design I have introduced. So if I determine that with potential from the data, the drop-off point is, email validation. But I mean, I've checked all our systems, email OTPs are being sent, but that point is still a drop-off point. Then we can look at the design solution, introduce a specific design change, but do an A/B test to validate whether that particular design change could be the potential reason. So look at the behavior between customers who encountered that specific change versus those who didn't. Okay, and draw your conclusion. So cohort analysis, but specifically on drop-off points, is something that has helped. All right. Recently, we in fact we had some issue in KYC that we actively use cohort analysis specifically on drop-off points to solve, and it was a design decision. It was a design problem that we solved with a design decision. You cannot imagine the impact of that singular design decision to input metrics that eventually tied all the way down to our volumes, which now ties to revenue. All right. So
Mm.
back to you, Nandi.
Yeah, I think that's so spot on, all right, because those, especially really understanding the funnel through a journey and using cohort analysis is such a significant thing when it comes to really understanding how people are engaging with your product and eventually the value that they kind of get from it. One other thing that I would also add is basically what is called maybe time to value measurement. All right. And there's something I recently or I'm reading or I've been studying recently, like how to measure input speed or the amount or how quickly people get to exactly where they want to be. And that's something that designers have to pay attention to because eventually, if the time to value is longer, you have more drop-offs, all right? You have more people tend to just leave the platform or leave that feature or not even eventually go ahead to use that feature that in question, all right? So there are a couple of other models that or techniques that could help you validate or ensure that design decisions kind of connect with your with business value. So that's very important. Thank you so much, Phillips. I think we'll just take our last question from the audience, and I think we have one very interesting one from Candle again. And this basically, and I think maybe for Lashadi, you can go with this. um, how can I, as a designer, effectively handle clients who are unsure about what they want, right? And what key questions can bring clarity to their vision and project goals?
Oh, okay. Hi everyone once again. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that question. And this is something I see a lot with new clients or sometimes small clients, right? They don't they know they have a problem, right? But they cannot really articulate what success should look like. So the first thing I do for me is I I don't try to design immediately, right? This person said, "Oh, this is the problem they have. They can't really articulate like what success should look. This is like the success metrics, or this is how you know that this product is successful." I don't just like go into my design and say, "Okay, oh, this person, I already have a vision of this. Okay, let me just jump into design and start designing immediately." Actually, focus on discovery. So I would say that maybe to everybody that designing without because before you design something you need to understand the problem first. You need to know what's the problem. Designing without understanding is actually you're guessing. It's just guesswork, right? To start with, you're not the user, right? So I start by asking some questions to actually like go deeper into the problem, right? Like to understand more of the problem, to understand the goals, and also more context, right? Because this person cannot articulate it well, right? So I start by asking, okay, this thing that we want to build for, who are the users, right? Because understanding your user is very key, like the audience, the target audience. Who are we building this for? Who are the users, right? Or who are the potential users, right? Now, also you ask questions like, now that you know, you okay, what is the exact, what problem are you trying to solve for this user? So we have users in a community, right? Maybe for instance, we have user in community A, right? We already know that we want to target maybe the old people in that community, right? Now, what problem are you trying to solve for those old people in that community A, right? Because sometimes the client will just describe features, but they don't really but they say the features, right? But the problem sometimes can be different, right? And you ask questions like, okay, what does success actually look like the metrics, the outcomes, or probably even like the feelings that the user should have, like when they're able to achieve this, or when they're able to do this particular action they need to perform. How do they feel about it? What's like the outcome? What's like your metrics, right? I think also you can ask questions around probably maybe business priorities, or maybe their constraints, probably the budget, or probably the timelines, right? What's like the um, if there's any like technical limitations, basically, right? I feel like that's like, I don't know if some people want to add, but once those questions, you can now like maybe start your little sketches, do your other stuff and all that. But I feel like those questions, yeah, you can ask those questions, so that, because sometimes I tend to write like when the user can just, I'm sorry, the client can just come and tell me, oh, Falasha, I want to do this. Then so I tend to ask those questions. Then I build like a document for them. I also like outline some things based on that. Then they read it again. And that's when they will say, oh, I didn't think about this before. Oh, now I can see that. So I don't know if
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
wants to add more to
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that, Shadi. This is such a very interesting question because I know a number of designers who've asked similar questions, and the one way I would address this is for you to position yourself as a strategic partner. All right, a designer is a strategic partner. What that means is you're not necessarily there to just create designs and you do your design process and come up with your prototypes and hand over. Basically, there is the strategy part, and it's at that strategy part where you kind of bring clarity. We usually describe the designers in my team as the eye of the team, of the product team, basically, because we kind of help provide clarity. Right? We ask questions that we try to ask questions that really touch on the real reason behind certain decisions or certain ideas that we want to explore. All right, and even up to the strategy. Okay, so now that we understand the why you want to get this thing done, how can we get it done? All right, with the resources that we have. And those kind of questions, you will typically not hear them from designers because most designers are just very focused on the actual pixel bending work per se. All right, but um, you want to come in at the strategy phase. Ask those very relevant questions about the how, the why, all right, and eventually what value should we get, all right. And at some points, because of the clarity issue, again, this brings up the part of experimentation. Are we willing to try certain ideas, all right, and see if they work, and then learn from that? Right. So it's a designer's as for this particular question, being a designer, you have to think of yourself as a strategic partner in the conversation. All right. Yeah. So I think we are done. I thank you so much, Afiz. Thank you so much, Phillips. Thank you so much, Falashade. So much insight has been shared so far. I personally have been taking notes here. Um, I personally have been taking notes, and they've been everybody's idea or context have been helpful to me. I know a couple of things I would also implement in my team, and I hope it has been the same for everyone who has been listening. Thank you so much for the time, and um, have a lovely, wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Nandi.
you. You're
Thank you,
welcome. Thank
Falashadi.
you. Thank you, Moyo. Thank you, Coral, for
Thank
adding
you,
value.
Philip. I think Philip just dropped off.
Bye, Hafiz.
Bye.
All right.